Welcome everybody. Thank you everybody online for joining us. We've got some fantastic people online with us tonight. We've got Johannesburg, we've got Sweden, and we've Canada twice, and we've got Bonnie Essex. Leanne, yeah, well done, mate. Yeah, thanks, mate. And thank you everybody for coming. It's nice to see some new faces. It's always really nice when we do these groups, because these groups have been running for 5 years or so. And yeah, it's always lovely when we get to see new faces. Yeah, this group, it started not long after I realised into the principles, and the moment I realised it and I saw the simplicity of life, I knew that having seriously suffered and struggled in life, been suicidal, been mad, very angry and stressed out, and to suddenly wake up within myself and see something so fundamental about life change my life, I knew that I had to share it. So that's how we started this community. It started in Manor House, and it was basically a men's group. And first week I had about 16 people. This is good. And then within 2 or 3 weeks, I had 2 people. Highlight of my life. One of those people was my dad, the other one was my mate. I remember being pretty put out, and I remember saying to them, "Can I open this up to women as well? Because the women are people too, and I know that they would really like to hear what we have to say." No, it's true, you are. And they said no, but I always did it after they all went home, so I did it. So opened it up to women, and it got too big, too big. So we've had a lot of people through this community for 4 years. We've really seen some beautiful transformations with people. People who've been struggling in life for decades, some of them. We've seen what people might term miracles take place. But this is all possible. And I think that's one of the things we really want people to leave with, a sense of. The title we've just totally made up from memory, because we wrote it a while ago now. We bothered to Facebook and read it again. But this life is not what we think. We really want people to get a sense of that. And when they start to get a sense of that, they will start to wake up to something within themselves. And this is what they are. Who they think they are. I'm not talking about who we think we are, who we want to be, or anything. We're talking about who we truly are, what we truly are. And this can be realised in a moment. It can be realised over time. There's nowhere to get to. Neither's more right than the next. So this is just an invitation for people to listen, to see if what we talk about tonight, what people talk about in the room, online, see if it resonates. A lot of this stuff will probably make no sense to begin with, or it may make no sense. But what we're talking about is the nature of life itself. It's not something we teach at school. We're talking about the nature of reality, the nature of what we are. It's a very deep conversation. It's a very simple conversation. And the consequences of realization from the internet. We work with people from all over the world, and we've gone to all different parts of the world. We've spoken to translators. We've spoken to cultures which live very, very different lives to our own. We've seen people no matter where we've been. What we're talking about is true. What you're saying is true. Why has nobody said this to me before. Why have I lived my life like this for so long? It's so obvious. Why did I not see it? You say some people call it slap-head therapy, but it's not therapy. I try and make that as clear as possible. What we're talking about isn't therapy, it's not counselling, it's not psychiatry. But the therapeutic value of realizing the true nature of reality is infinite. And it's something that grows, it's something that evolves within us. There's a good friend on this on our online right now, and I love this lady. I'm not going to mention her name, but her name's Leia. And Leia's not listening because she's busy talking to her daughter. But...
No, they can't hear very well.
Oh, good.
So I'm just gonna...
Probably for the best. Leia, God bless her. I remember Miss Intellect, Miss Analytic. She'd sit there with a notepad and writing down all this stuff, and I'm like, Leia, what you're looking for, what we're trying to get across isn't there. You won't find it in ink. You'll find it within yourself. And after a few months, I love this lady so much. I can see her smiling at me right now. The first time I ever met Leia, she was hammering us. She's a lawyer. Bang, bang, bang. Is this going to affect my religion? Is this going to affect... I've only got 15 minutes because Shabbat's coming. It was a Friday night. And 2 hours later, I think it was, we were still there getting drilled by Leia. I have to show you this lady because she's a very special lady.
Double click on it.
Don't hide. This is Leia. This is my beautiful friend. And how do I get that back? Do I need to? Let's have Leia's smiling face. And it took a few months before Leia went, I'm changing. And I can't tell you why. And that troubles me because Leia really, really wanted to know. I want to know stuff. But there's stuff about life we can't put into a singular thought. There's stuff about life we cannot write down into words. There's stuff about life that we cannot comprehend with the intellect. But it's what we're made of. And it's when we pay so much attention to what the intellect's created is that we create what's called ego. The intellect is ego. It's the same thing, intellect and ego. They're just two words to describe the same thing. And when we start to wake up to the nature of our intellect and the role that it plays in our life and how most people on the planet allow it to completely take over their lives. They live out of it. Life becomes a very analytical thing. We judge people, we judge ourselves. At some point, if we're lucky, we start to wake up and see past it. And for those that do, they find beauty and love starts to emanate more in their life, starts to manifest more in their lives, understanding, compassion, gratitude, peace. Easier life. And this is all through simply looking in the direction of our very own mind. Something that I had analysed numerous times. What I've thought. We're not talking about what we think. We don't need to go there. We're going to think all kinds of mad shit. Right? Let's just lay that down right now. Human beings think mad shit, right? We all think stupid thoughts. We all think thoughts where we go, fucking hell, did I actually just think that? We all think illegal thoughts. We all think mad shit. We do. Nobody wants to talk about it. I don't want to talk about my worst thoughts. I feel socially ousted. But we all have mad thoughts. And I think when you start to wake up to the nature of thought, I had a lovely conversation with Dina just before we started. Dina here is one of my oldest friends. Like we go back to 2 or 3 years old. She's actually the same age as me, believe it or not. I know I look a lot younger. you start to gain insight into the nature of thought, what it does, how it creates reality that doesn't look like it. And when we start to see into it, we start to find freedom. And we, as a family, we've seen this within our own family, and change doesn't have to take time, can do. It will always change as a natural state of the universe. Change is always going to happen. But it's quite widely considered that if you suffer, you will suffer for as long as it will take you as long to get over the suffering as what you suffered for. That's what I was told. So because I've been depressed for 5 years, whatever it was at the time, it's going to be 5 years till you're out of it. Nonsense. Misleading and nonsense. Dangerously nonsense. So, is he Jenny? I finished now. I do that. I'm like,
I didn't. We have a Penny in the room. We've been Facebook kind of acquaintances and known each other. But Penny's been part of something called My Mental Health Rocks, which is going into schools. And so I didn't know if you just wanted to mention a little bit about that. So it's cool. So we're saying there's all these people actually up in the north that we didn't know about, and we're all starting to kind of connect. And it's kind of like a build of this understanding. So I'd be happy to.
Two of our mutual friends, Judy Brown and Leanne McDonald, over in Northumberland, they were working in schools and seeing a lot of anxiety in the children in the schools, and they decided to do something about it basically, and then set up My Mental Health Rocks. And we go into schools and our aim is to do a fully funded workshop in every school in the UK and Canada. We're in Canada now as well. And
I think Jessie's on actually.
Oh, is she? Oh, cool.
Yeah, she is.
And so we do a 90-minute workshop, and we talk to the kids about them finding their innate well-being, reminding them that they're okay. And we teach them, we do it in a very simplistic way. We talk about their superpowers, which I can remember all 5 of them: resilience, calm, wisdom, confidence. And there's one more, which I can't remember. My mind's gone completely blank. Anyway, so there's 5.
Resilience.
I said resilience.
That was number 1.
Oh, did you? Resilience, wisdom, calm, confidence, and creativity.
Creativity, that's the one I was missing. Yeah. So they're the ones that we talk about. We talk about them as if they're wearing their cape and then their superpowers. Remind them they've got them inside. We do a little exercise where we have rainbow rocks to represent their innate well-being, and we put them in a cup and we give them bits of tissue paper to represent their thoughts, and they throw the thoughts in, and their well-being gets obscured by all the thoughts that are coming in, and then we show them they can just take the thoughts away, and their well-being is always there, solid in the bottom of the cup. It doesn't go away. They're very simple. The kids love it, and it's a brilliant thing to be part of.
Thank you.
Thanks,
and this
Ben.
week is Children's Mental Health Week here in the UK.
Is it?
Yeah. So I stumbled on the principle. For me, it was about out of the blue 2.5 years ago. And I've been sort of following the road, and I fell into My Mental Health Rocks.
Cool. As happens.
Yeah.
You know, you embark on this in this direction, and you just got to hold on, because you haven't got a solid clue where the hell life's going to take you. It's like you just getting to work with beautiful people, like people online, and getting to work with people from Canada who are working with kids and all that. When you start to wake up to this, your life will take you in some mad directions. I love it. Well done, Pen. Thanks, love.
It was cool. We were speaking to Terry. Terry Rubenstein did a webinar for us. So she's got the iHeart stuff down in London. And someone asked, what's your inspiration about working with youth? Because before that, they hadn't done a huge amount in schools. And she said she was kind of sat doing a training over 2 days with adults. And she said, as she was listening to people kind of share a bit about themselves, she kind of just saw like that kid in the playground who felt left out, or that kid that thought they were always bullied. And she kind of saw like where we create our ideas. And if we don't see that they're creations, we feel victimized by them, and then we carry them into the workplace, or we carry them into our relationships. And she said she doesn't want to work so much she does work with adults, but more so with the youth, because she said instead of kind of working with the after effects when the kind of all that thought's been piled on top, to start prevention, like this work with the young people, and prevent them from having so much stuff piled on top, get them to see what it is that covers up their well-being. And I thought that was such a, you know, that
to change the world, start with kids.
Yeah, because at the moment there's like Mental Health Rocks, iHeart, Spark. There's always different curriculums now going in and working with.
And my Mental Health Rocks, we are affiliated with Spark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so it's more UK version.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's taking off. And I think I was around when this kind of first came to the UK, and it was, you'd send off for books in Canada and they'd take 3 months to get to you, or they'd not arrive, or CDs of the man Sydney Banks who first started talking about this, who had the insight. And now you go online and there's so much information and books, and it's in schools, prisons, business, just kind of across the board. So it really is gaining momentum, and I think it is starting to shift, like how people view mental health, how people view themselves, how people view spirituality and psychology, and kind of bringing everything back together again. And more when we travel with work, or when we just end up chatting to someone in a coffee shop, people are interested, people want to know about this, like we're ready for something new, it seems. And I think it is such a, like Dave said about your text before, like I feel like I'm kind of getting something from the books, and I feel different. And it's so, we're so used to learning in a way that we could say what we learn. This is different, like we start to feel different from within, and you start seeing a new world, you start behaving differently, and it kind of, it's such an interesting thing, because it isn't a solid, I know this, now I feel different. It's, wow, like could this be true? Like there's something resonating inside that's almost feels like we've always kind of known this, but how did we forget? And often it is more of a remembering, and then it's a lifetime of remembering, and then feeling like you've totally forgotten, and then remembering, and getting really more and more comfortable with that dance and that play. Because I know initially when I came across this, I felt like I had about 7 months of just like, how did I not know this? This is amazing. And I could see it playing out with people. And then it felt like I kind of got a little bit arrogant, and would be like, how could anyone be shy? How could anyone be insecure? Because I felt almost bulletproof. And then suddenly it was like, back in my head, back in my thought, feeling shy and insecure again. And it was a humbling experience, because I almost had got to the point where I'd got one over on life somehow. I understood something that meant I wouldn't have to experience suffering. But what came from that was the learning and the compassion and the empathy for other people. Hey, how you doing?
She kept it clean. How you doing?
Sorry.
How you doing, man? Excellent. Yeah, I'll crack that one.
Yeah, so it's like you start to then have more compassion again, and you see, because I think I was starting to get frustrated with people, like, can't you just see it's thought? Why are you being so bothered? And then it's like, yeah, when you're in it and that's your reality, there's no getting away from it. And I think there's a gentleness and a respect, a respect for this reality stuff, a respect for these principles that we're talking about that point to how reality is created. And then it's a learning forever from one another and from yourself. And I think it isn't there's no end goal. In some ways, we're just having to remember again and again that we're already it, we're already whole, we're already here. This is how we already operate, and we always have. We just didn't understand. And I always say that in the early days, it was like I'd gone from being a victim of everything and everyone and my past and myself, to feeling buoyant and kind of understanding of the character I'd been and why I'd felt like I felt. But it was going from that feeling totally affected by an external world to recognizing, well, the only thing that's affecting my reality is thought, and it's not on purpose. And that's the same for all of us. So, and it unites us in that fact that we're all being lived, we're all having experience created through us by these fundamental principles of, like we often say, we'll name the principles, because sometimes we've got to the end of 2 hours and someone's like, what are the principles then? The reason we sometimes don't is because the words in themselves will be familiar, but it's what they're trying to describe. They're a metaphor. So the principle of mind is described as the intelligence of life, the intelligence behind and of all life. In religion, it may be called God. I know there's many different terms for it, but Sydney Banks really wanted to speak to everyone, religious and non-religious. So to him, it was this universal mind, this intelligence. And then he spoke about the universal consciousness. We're all conscious beings, that this is a conscious universe, and we're all part of that. We're not separate from it. And then he spoke about the power of thought as the way that we are able to create a reality, to create life. That in itself, it's this neutral power that can come, anything can come to life from it. And that with those 3 principles, we create reality. And so does everything else on earth. And that's where we start to see we're all the same, regardless of where we're born or what we believe. The way that we create our reality is the same. So we speak to people all around the world with different religious beliefs, with different beliefs about all kinds of things, but this is the thing that's the same, like foundational. So before all of that, and the more that we see that and recognise that, I think that one of the things is that you feel more connected, less isolated, less separate. And I see we're all in the same boat. Sorry, someone's showing us a really cute dog. And that feeling of connection is we start being different in the world. And I read a beautiful article recently about the climate stuff, and it was called a different take on the climate crises. And he was saying that in so many ways, kind of the way it's going out into the world at the moment is creating more fear, more isolation, more panic, and then people are more likely to go out and spend and buy and consume. But he was saying really what we're looking for is that feeling of connection again. And when we feel connected, we don't look so much to external sources for our well-being, because we feel okay. And like with the kids, we're letting them know that they've got everything they need inside them. We're born with it. It doesn't go anywhere. It just gets covered up. And like my dad's a head teacher, and he said he used to see like these kids come in at 4 years old, and they could do anything. They could run, they could jump, they could sing, they could dance. They were good at everything. And he said, you see them leaving at 11 years old with, I'm not very good at that, and I don't like doing that. And all of these beliefs, but no one ever told them that they were beliefs. They were made of thought. They had no fixed, actual substance to them. Substance. I said that today as well.
Good lass. You learn it.
But is that making sense? And I think it would be really nice if people had anything they wanted to share, like people that've been around it, or newer people they wanted to ask questions. We always love it if people do share in the group. Anything comes to mind.
Well, we just kind of never stopped talking on the way here. It's been like half an hour. We've only just kind of met. I'm do pet assisted therapy, and we're both working with the same young girl. And neither of us can remember. I said something, and you finished off my sentence, and we both went, "Do you know about the 3 principles?" We were like, "Whoa!" And then on the way here, we've just been, and yet we can't think of anything to say.
Yeah, but it was quite strange as well with that conversation about what it looks like to everybody else. Obviously, we're there with the girl and her foster mother. We're suddenly hugging each other like we're so difficult to know this story before. These 2 people just going.
What do you do with roll up the sleeve and it's the wink, It's like, and we're just like, oh, you're in the same cult. Yes, I don't even know what it was on. Yes, but it's now.
Yeah, we'll get to the initiation later on.
I just think when we were talking about how people perceive and how hard it is to say a thing that doesn't get a response, that's just not about it. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not talking about some time in a conversation about principles. I just mean like that scenario where the mother's suddenly got an assumption about what this could be,
Aye,
might be, might
yeah.
not be. And what on earth you say at that point?
You know,
Yeah, and I said to my mum, and I said, yeah, I'm going out tonight. She's like, where are you going? I'm going to Kendal. She's like, what for? And I went, it doesn't matter. No, come on. No, it doesn't matter. No.
You see, well done you. I did the opposite of that. I did, in my family, it was very much, I went from planning on suicide to, holy shit, life's amazing, like that. So my family were like, what the fuck's wrong with Dave? He's gone mad. Is he back on drugs? Dad accused me of being radicalised, didn't he? I'd been radicalised, and what else is it? Yeah, joined the cult. And I always remember, I knew that what I'd found was so amazing and true and real, and more real than my everyday life. But it was, I thought, I really want my family, of all the people that you want to have this, you want your nearest and dearest.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And they're the hardest people.
Yeah, we were saying, like my partner, I'm like, so yeah, I'm going to Kendal, but I don't go out. And he's like, what? And I was like, it's yeah, just go. Yeah.
But
We were saying how hard it is, like the people nearest and dearest, it's like, it's the 3 principles. What?
The hardest.
Father half says, okay.
Good lad.
Well, Penny always said that I was born with
Everybody is, and I think this is something to really look at. Carry on.
I go back to sort of analogies which we can all sort of there. I remember when I was about 19, job, and I had my first job assessment. And I went in, sitting there, sat down. I don't really know what this is about. I said, well, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Well, is where I'm supposed to say I'm going to be managing director of a company or financial director or something. Well, yeah, you know, it's a bit more realistic. I said, I don't know, because if I start to think about one thing, I can miss all the other opportunities. And actually, that's the way I've gone through life, because I've gone off in different directions. I've done jobs, and even within the job, you know, I've gone off places and done things that I wouldn't necessarily done if I was just going like that's the road. And I've always just feel you should always, the looking up, that whole thing about looking up and not looking down. And the other thing is, again, going on through the reviews over the years to management and stuff, you know, there's always a saying, you know, you go into there and they say, you're a bit soft, you're a bit too easy, and you say, do I get the job done? Yes. Have you got any complaints? You know, no. And that's it. And, you know, you would see some of the managers, you know, doing the old, giving them the right rollicking for no reason, just, and go and do this, and I want it done now, if not sooner. And then, you know, whereas I would go out to somebody and say, okay, and they go off, and if you do it, why don't you do that? Carry on. And they did, because it's that whole different attitude, and again, it's about how other people want to be treated. You know, do you, you know, if you're bullied, nobody really wants to be bullied, but they're scared to say anything. Whereas if somebody just says, you know, like your mates do, like that, yeah, you know, we'll go off and tonight we'll go down this pub. And that's it. Yeah.
It does get a lot. It does get a lot of stuff done. Does kindness?
It does.
And it's something that is massively undervalued in our world, especially in the West, where we're so driven. You know, but no, that's beautiful, man. But this is a beautiful point. What we're talking about is something that everybody already is. You know, you have to hear people say, "Oh, he already is the principles." Yeah, everybody's the principles. The principles is truly all that ever exists, and this is why this message is so powerful and so important for people to know, because the principles were actually a metaphor created by a man named Sydney Banks. And Sydney Banks was a welder who had no experience of psychology other than he'd been a service user and spent a lot of time being analysed. But one day he had a deep realisation into the nature of thought. And he called it universal thought. And after a period of time, after a few years of speaking and waking up again, and then at some point within a few days actually of that,
3 days.
that initial insight, he said he went through the process of death, died. But he described death as simply death of ego. That's what he described death as. Nothing to be afraid of, but death of ego. And so what he described as ego was everything that we believe to be true about ourselves and this world. That's what he described as ego. And when I first heard that, it was like, yeah, I get that. I get that. The thing that I think I am as Dave is a construction of thought. So what if you were to ask Dave, what's Dave? Well, Dave's an ex-tree surgeon, X this, X that, 3 principles facilitator. This is what Dave is. He's a brother, he's a son, he's a friend, he's a partner, he's a dog owner. I'd reel off a load of things, but those are just memories. Those are things I've remembered. I'm not that. I'm not memories. Memories are thoughts. Nobody is thoughts. They're thinkers. You could, like in the mystics from thousands of years have said that life is a divine dream. And it's true. Reality is a dream. It really doesn't look like it, but neither does a dream when we're asleep. It looks real, it looks tangible. You feel things, you feel pain, your heart responds, your body responds in a dream. If you trip over a fall or you fall off a cliff or something, you wake up, your body doesn't know you're dreaming. It doesn't know you're safely tucked up in bed. You will sweat, you will probably scream, you will choke, you'll be flooded with adrenaline, and you will wake up and your heart will be pounding, your palms will be sweaty, and your body never knew the difference between the dream state and the awake state.
Vision in my head is when you die, just standing there after you die. I'm just going like, oh my God, it was just lying. Just like you do after you've had a bad dream. Do you know what I mean? You'll just be like, God, there was I all worried.
Yeah. Yeah. This is it, you know. So many people are so afraid to live. So afraid of life. And I speak personally, yeah, me too. I've spent an awful lot of time afraid of life. But it was always because I didn't understand it. I didn't know what life was. I felt like a pawn, you could say, being shoved around by life. I felt like things happened. And I tried to describe something I tried to write a few months ago, or years ago, in fact. And it was basically, I was trying to explain my irrelevance. Yeah, it felt like my irrelevant. It felt like my being was irrelevant to life, irrelevant to reality. My being there was irrelevant to reality, and therefore, with my being irrelevant to reality, it's probably a really shit way of describing it, but this was a conversation with my sister Jenny had. It felt like life had a hold over me. People had a hold over me. Circumstance, the future, the past, had its every single one of them had its claws in me somehow, and was giving me pain and suffering, and I felt powerless. And then when I woke up, the day I woke up and I truly went within and just woke up and saw there is no reality outside of consciousness. There is no reality outside of anybody, because it takes a consciousness to experience the reality. And everybody is that consciousness. And the moment I saw that, it was like, well, life's dead simple. Of course it's dead simple. Why do people argue? Because we see different worlds. You want to change the world, change yourself. because the world that you see doesn't exist outside in a true manner. We can all watch the same circumstance and come up with totally different scenario and totally different belief about it. We can all go and watch the same film, and some of us will come out and go, awesome. Somebody goes, shit, what about? Did you watch the same film? Were we actually watching the same film? It was crap. No, it was amazing. It was all right. We'd all come away with a different experience of the film. Yet we're all observing the same thing. And in Buddhism and in Hinduism, they've said, if you want to change the world, change yourself. Change yourself. Wake up. Wake up. See what life is. Wake up. See that reality is an internal experience. And we've never experienced outside of it. There is no outside of it. You can't step out of consciousness to experience something, because you can't step out of consciousness. It's what we are. And consciousness is an infinite field of potential to think. And that, therefore, reality is an infinite field of potential in every single moment, which collapses down into a singular point of reference that we experience as our life now. How it feels, how it appears, what it looks like, what people look like, what the world looks like, what global situations look like. They are all manifestations of mind. And when we start to wake up to that fact, we start to realize something so unbelievable. We start to realize that we are more powerful than anything we can possibly comprehend. In the Bible, it talks about God is a creator, the creator. God is the creator of heaven and earth. Thought is the creator. You've done very well to hold that in. Thought creates. Thought is how we create our experience of life. In consciousness, as we think, so things appear. Lisa saw something really funny in her reality. And it happens. And sometimes people see really shit things in their reality. I know every single one of us do from time to time. We're never stuck with the same experience. Experience comes and goes. But it gets terrifying when we start to identify with the experience or start to identify with the thoughts. And it gets terrifying because fundamentally we're misaligned with truth. We're fundamentally misaligned with truth. We're not what we think. This life is not what we think. This life is that we think. That's what life is. It's a thinking state. And I always remember the best question I ever got asked was, and Sue can't make it tonight, but she once asked me, she said, what do you think thought is, Dave? What's thought? I remember being a very arrogant 33-year-old man and getting really pissed off with her for asking me that stupid question that you should only ask a child. I remember then she goes, well, what do you think it is? I said, ideas. She went, well done, Dave. That's a use of thought. Well done. What do you think thought is, Dave? What do you think it is? Where did it come from? What created it? What thought up thought? What dreamt up the idea of beings that could think and create reality for themselves? What was that? A question I never asked myself. I remember sitting there and getting very humble because I really didn't have a choice at that point, because I did not know. And I just remember going, I don't know what thought is. And she went, neither do I. And to this day, I know it is impossible for me to know what thought is. The power of thought, I know it's impossible for me to know it, because the moment I think I know something, we've taken an infinite potential and we've collapsed it down to a potential. It's never going to be a potential. It's always infinite potential. It's everything. Everything comes to us via thought. All experience. And that's what life is. Reality is. Reality is a state of mind. That's why we can go to work one day and it be amazing, the next, and Some people are complete arseholes, and you can look at them and go, "Why, you've been an arsehole today." On other days, they can be an arsehole, and you go, because the reality that we encounter isn't the individual. The reality we encounter is the state of consciousness in that moment. And this is a beautiful thing to start to wake up to, because when you start to wake up to it, you realize everybody on earth operates in exactly the same way. The only difference is we all think different. And it is impossible for, I've known my sister for, I've known mum for longer. And we don't always agree. We do see very, very, very different worlds. And it's impossible for me to see the world that my mum sees. It's impossible. And likewise, it's impossible for her to see the world that I see. She can imagine it, but it will only ever be her interpretation of my reality. And so when we start to get curious about that, when we start to wake up to this fundamental fact about life, that reality is a state of mind, it's not what happens in the world. What happens in the world is totally neutral. It's totally neutral. It's what we think about it. You could take really horrific things like people walking down the street stabbing people in London. Can't tell me that's neutral, Dave. That's horrific. In my reality, that's horrific. But in some people's reality, it's a celebration. Wow, we did it. We did it for the cause. That's what we really wanted to see happen. Well done, well done. Pat on the back, awesome, let's celebrate. That's their reality, and their reality will appear as true and real to them as mine does to me. And then there'll be people who, well, it doesn't affect me, I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered. Didn't even know about it. In their reality, it didn't even happen. So you start to wake up and you start to realize that reality isn't a thing that exists outside of us. It's a state of mind. And the way we think creates how the world looks, and the way we think creates how we feel about things, creates all emotions and feelings. We always blame them on circumstance, objects, money, houses, time. Thought doesn't exist in time. Time exists in thought. It takes thought to experience time, the illusion of time. There's only ever the moment. There's only ever now. But with thought, we can think about the future and the past, and it creates the illusion that we have time. It's just a moment. It only ever has been a moment. It will only ever be a moment. So you start to wake up to the fundamental facts about the illusions that our mind creates that we never question until somebody says, read that book. Or somebody goes, "Dear Dave, listen to what I have to say." And then you start to inquire in this direction, and before you know it, you're starting to wake up within yourself. And the way you wake up is you have realizations. You go, "Oh, shit, I feel different. I don't know why." Or, "Holy shit, why have I never thought that before?" And this is the beginning. It's just a new beginning. It's not a goal. It's not an end. It's simply a new beginning. And from that new beginning, most people tend to let go of their life. There's that saying in AA, let go and let God. In 12-step, let go and let God. This is what people tend to do. They tend to start to see the irrelevance, like Martin, what's his name? Nigel, sorry, Nigel. Like Nigel was saying.
That's your name.
Yeah.
I'll totally rename everyone.
I'm
No, I am. But we start to find that all the things that we thought were so important and we thought we needed to have in place, all the things that we thought kept us safe, we realized that they were simply beliefs. And as we start to wake up to that, they start to drop away. And as they start to drop away, we start to find ourselves far more present. Not trying to get anywhere. This isn't to say don't plan. We're planning work. We're planning the future, but we don't kind of live there. So this is, Jenny once described this as more of an unlearning than a learning, because it's just going back to what we already are, and what it is that is creating the illusion of what we think we are, who we think we are. I'm a this kind of person, I'm a that kind of person, whatever. It's thought. When we start to wake up to this creative force, we start to find something that we can depend on for the rest of our life. We can remember, like Jenny was saying, we can remember this for the rest of our life. Holy shit, life seems really difficult right now, but when we know it's thought, I don't know, you can ride it. That resilience that people talk about, they're already in. It's not something you find. It's not something you earn. It's not something that anybody can give you or anybody can take away. We're totally built to completely live and deal with life. And we can deal with anything. There is nothing that life can throw at us that we can't deal with. We might not like it all, but there's nothing that life can throw at us that we can't deal with.
I love what you said then, Nigel, about how you have lived your life, and it's like keep it fresh and going from one thing to another.
Yeah.
And I used to have before I realised who I used to be so frightened of everything. I was absolutely terrified of people, as in always thinking I was going to get got. And used to do a lot of running outside, and I was thinking someone was going to open murder me. The amount of time I spent hiding behind walls, the amount of time I spent just completely shitting myself through life. And I can remember the first thing that happened. I used to be scared of the dark, terrified of the dark. And I remember, I think I still lived at home. Did I live at home? No, I didn't live at home. I was round at my mum and dad's, and I'd been to take my dog for a walk around the fell and on the back of the river, and I remember it got dark, but I didn't notice. I came home and I climbed over the fence, and Dad came flying out and went, "What are you doing? What have you done?" I went, "Oh yeah." I hadn't even noticed. Because whatever had woken up inside me had kind of all the fear that used to come actually stopped coming. But then when it crept back in around the edges, you could just see it. So on the back of that, the narrowness of life, door just actually blew up, like actually blew off. And it just noticing that, or realising that I don't put the content into my thoughts. I don't do that. They just breeze in, and they breeze through, and they breeze out.
You don't choose it.
I don't choose what I think about. And the more I realised that, or the more that awoke, should I say, the more of the boundaries and the confines knocked off, and the more possibilities were just there, like just available. And I can't believe where like we have had an awesome time this past sort of 6-7 years of just the freeness in life by being, and we have also all been through quite an incredible amount of
challenge
situations that we've ridden, we've fallen off the surfboard, we've face planted. But there's that something wakes up when you start to realise that we're beyond this form. You only have to watch, like we always say, nature, the planets, the universe, and how you start to get out of yourself, out of the self-importance, and notice that there's something powering the self-importance, creating the self-importance, or the fear or whatever, and you start to notice that power, and then it's like freedom. You don't have the boundaries of where the focus of the destination and missing all the stuff. Then you just start to go, shit, I want to do everything, and you get bombarded. But then also at the same time, you do get caught up in the mix. And you pop out that awakening state is inside, is always what's powering everybody anyway.
That question you said about what's full, a lot of it is interpretation. There is something to challenge, or is it an opportunity?
Oh, well, this is it. When you look over it all,
You said
it's
surfing.
amazing.
Yeah, it's a challenge to try and stay on the surfboard, but what a great opportunity to be out there in the sea on the surfboard. You know, and it's that, you know, are you scared of drowning? What's the likelihood you're going to drown? But people would. But it's very unlikely you're going on a surfboard completely on your own as novices and not have somebody there to support you. You know, and so you think, right, it's an opportunity. This is great. Let's go out there and enjoy it.
My point to actually that was one of the first things I ever realised, which I know I've said before in group, but it was profound, I think, both for me and my mum, when my best friend went off to do the Camino de Santiago, the hike across Spain, and she rang me after 3 weeks. She was like, Lisa, I can't do this without you, have to come out. It's brilliant. So right, okay. I was like, where's the nearest airport? She said, I think it's Bilbao. So I checked where she was on the map, and she was 18 hours on public transport away. I thought, would it be asked to sit on public transport for 18 hours? I'll hire a car. Mum goes, there you go. Yeah, well, she was like, I'll get you a taxi. I said, how much is a taxi? Booked in for 500 quid. She's like, not getting a taxi, not driving to Spain on your own at night time. And it was like this. It was like, well, why not? The only thing that is scaring us is what we're thinking. You're thinking about the potential, and I'm thinking about getting murdered at a service station, but I know that's just a load of bullshit. So I'm just going to ride that one, and I'm going to book my flight, Mum, keep you 500 quid, and I'm going to hire a car. So I flew to Bilbao Airport, and it was just totally awesome. I didn't have, like, little bits would pop in, and I'd be like, well, I know what that is. So I get in my car, got in the car at 10 o'clock at night, drove through Spain for 5 hours in a thunder and lightning storm. I was actually screaming with my music on full blast because the freedom that I felt from how I used to be to what had become available was just magical, and then it didn't stop.
Just never stop.
Never stopped.
This is the nice thing.
Because it takes away the fear from an opportunity that might knock on your door. And you can sit there and you start to get all this, oh, well, and then you're like, something just, I don't know what it is. Who knows what puts the magic into life, but something goes, sometimes it says, no, you just shut yourself and you don't do it, or you just know it and the door opens and off you go, and you're not on the same little funnel that you used to be in.
I always wanted to see the way that they saw it in a moment. So I was always looking for this moment, this flash. And I was walking the dog around my family. No, there's 6 or 7 billion people on this planet, and we all see things differently. I'm never going to see that. And all of a sudden I thought, that's it. So all these little bricks that I've built around myself, like, I'm scared of this, I'm scared of that, I don't like these, I don't like that, I don't like the other. This tool that I made for myself of the past and the future and whatever, just went, which left a complete open playing field. I'm not afraid of heights. Well, I am a little bit, but you know, I can cope with that. And I can cope with all the things that made me frightened. And it was just brilliant. Brilliant. Thanks, Dave.
I think we earned it.
Yeah, we earned it.
Somebody said it to me. Somebody said it to me today. I think you earned it. Who the hell was that? It was supposed to be. I think you earned it. Dr. Howes it was. Who's Dr. Howes? He said, the doctor, bless him, the old doctor saw him, he said, I've heard some really good things about your freedom thinking. I said, oh, that's nice. He said, yeah, I've heard really good, you got very good, I'll tell you, you got a very good reputation. Reputation is what he said. No, not bedside one. That's terrible. But then he looked at me and went, I'm glad you're happy. I think you've earned it. Thanks, Dr. Al. Bless him, he did see me at some shitty times. Sorry, Ben.
That's right. The height thing is, I felt like before Sid, now I'm in after Sid, I felt like I was walking along the edge of a precipice. and what was below the precipice was terrifying. And I was literally frightened of everything. Stressful job, you know, my whole life was stressful, just worried about everything. And so the whole time you're holding your breath because you can't breathe because you're frightened of what might happen. And it, like I say, it was well out of the blue for me. Suddenly it didn't matter because actually falling off precipice would be quite exhilarating. That free fall is
That's right.
quite, you know, and I still have moments. I've had a meltdown today, complete, and
Normal.
it hasn't been. I haven't had one for a while, but it's been building, and I kind of just leapt off the cliff, and you know, but over the day, I've just been kind to myself today, and it's leveled out again. But we just get used to living with that fear, and it becomes normal, doesn't it? But the whole time you're in this height.
And then you attribute this fear to the world, and you start to think the world's a terrible, scary place,
Absolutely.
full of terrible, scary people.
And it's exhausting.
It's terrifying.
Totally exhausting.
Yeah.
So when it all just levels out, and you've got time to actually, it's a beautiful view from that height.
Thanks, Dan.
That was a good one. But I know before I sort of came across principles, there were two instances in my life. One was going up a signpost in a car on a mega accident, and halfway up, just having a complete sense of whatever's going to happen, is going to happen. Just it's like thought just buggered off, you know, just like wasn't worth. It wasn't doing. There was nothing it could do, so it just disappeared. And it was that thing that people talk about when it's like, that's what's going on.
Pure presence.
Totally there, because there were 3 generations in that car. So the fact that was a sensation, quite extraordinary. And then the other one was a couple of years ago, very claustrophobic, but deciding for a specific reason that I wasn't going to the underground in them. And I still can't quite explain this day how it actually felt, but it was literally, I'd made the decision, so I knew I was going to do it. And so therefore, it was literally like my thinking was going around here, but you could collapse like you did before, you could just lose your memory and people actually do the floor, because that's sort of been happened before. And it was just like, well, I might as well shut up, because I'm going to do it. So again, it sort of went, okay, you're on your own, sort of like, and it wasn't like I zenned out. It wasn't like I was going, you know, it wasn't like I was being angst and holding it. So it was this other thing again that just happened. And that literally happened as I went down and through. I went, oh, this is really good. What's going on? In a strange state, and looked up, there was a big poster that said, don't be scared. Just like, wow, thank you. But what I realise now is that those 2 states, that state, is what's there until all the time. It wasn't something that just came across me at that time. You know, it wasn't something that came to me. It didn't come there to here to be with me in those moments. It's what's there when the thinking buggers off. It's that space, and in terms of what we're scared of, because I met Lisa about a week and a half ago. I did my first book. Lisa mentioned before, but then I saw you again 2 days ago or something. 2 days ago, forgetting completely that she was bringing a snake to see this girl we're seeing, and me press the door and go, oh my goodness, is the snake still here? And is the snake still here? Yes. And like, yeah, the snake's still here. Okay. And the guy sort of saying, oh, you've got to tie it around your neck, because, you know, the girl's done it, so you've got to do it to show her. Yeah, right. So I get up there, don't tie it. Here you go. And it was that moment. Yeah, it is just thinking that.
That's it.
Got a little more real.
So the thing is, though, we're all made of the same stuff, so that snake is made of everything we're made of.
Yeah.
We're all put together in a different way, and it's all same stuff.
And it's my thinking about, which is the interesting thing, and it's always the thinking, isn't it? It's just without fail. And I remember that brilliant thing you said about not many commas, more full stop, less commas. Or Michael Neal with the after the therefore, and I find that's
I think it was
really
Ruby who
useful.
said that originally.
Was it?
Yeah,
It's just such a useful measure of coming back to like, oh, whoa, when did I get beyond the therefore? How do I backtrack?
That's it. When you've got that full stop in your life, it's like you have the opportunity to, when you can't know something you don't know. It's impossible. You know, one of the first things I said to Jenny was, look, I'm shit at reading between the lines, right? I have to tell you, I can't read between the lines. And I don't just know.
I don't get subtlety.
I don't get subtlety. I don't get it. If you need me to know something, I need you to tell me in really spelt out, simple way. Dave, I need you to do this. You haven't moved that shit there for 4 days. You haven't moved it. I need it cleaning up. Don't just assume I know. And I just say this to you, didn't I? And it made our relationship so much easier than previous relationships that I've encountered. But we can't know what we don't know. Can't. You know, you can't know what you don't know. And I think I had something to say about this actually. And when you don't know, we're living in a thought-created illusion of life. And I call it an illusion. I say it's an illusion because it's continuously changing shape, flavor. No two people on earth see the same world. Yeah, it's an illusion. It's a dream state. The dream is consciousness thinking, experiencing. It's no different when we wake up. It's exactly the same process taking place apart from the senses are engaged. It's the only difference. The senses are engaged. So we go from an internal dream reality to what looks like an external dream reality, but this external dream reality is still taking place within. There is no outside, there never has been, there never will be. And when you start to wake up to that, you start to wake up to the point that you're free. Totally free. I was saying to a young girl yesterday, there's some people we worked with in a township in South Africa, and this man came up to me and said, "You can't say this, you're white. Can't talk to me about freedom, you're white." I said, "Okay." I said, "Come with me." And I said, "Right, see that wall?" I said, "Imagine I'm really going to suppress you." I said, "I'm going to strap you to the wall so you can't move. Your legs are open, your arms strapped to the wall, shackled to the wall. I'm going to leave you there. I'm not going to tell you for how long, but I'm going to leave you there for at least weeks. You can't physically move. Is your mind suppressed? Is your mind free? Are you free to think anything you want? Can I shackle your mind? Can you dream about your childhood? Can you think about the future? Can you find peace with where you are? Yeah, I could. Where does suppression truly exist? And I've had this conversation with a few people in South Africa, and people have really seen that the only place suppression truly exists is in the mind. People do really shitty things to one another, but the experience is always experienced by a thought. There's no exceptions to this point. And remember, we went to a soup kitchen, forgive me people who've heard me say this, but our friend said, we'll have a brew after this. Our friend said, the problem's too big in South Africa. There was a soup kitchen full of 300 homeless people. And she came out, she said, the problem's too big. She's crying. Now, what do you mean the problem's too big, Lace? And she said, I've got all these people, it's just scratching the surface of the problem. And me and Jen looked at each other and went, no, the problem isn't too big. I said, the problem's really big if you consider it, look at it from the point of view of housing. Yeah, all these people need housing, all these people need equal amounts of money. And when we look at jobs and we look for equality in the outside world, yeah, it looks really overcomplicated. I said, but do you know what? If South Africans just change their minds about one another, the whole country would change. Because the only thing that keeps it in that state is beliefs. Stories about who one another are. Stories about what those people did and what those people did. They hold on to the past. They don't come back to now, the only time where life truly exists. And the moment that South Africa changes its mind about one another, it's happening slowly. But the moment they start to wake up and realize that the only thing that creates separation or the illusion of separation is a thought. It's a thought thick. And what is a thought? It's fucking nothing. It's an expression of consciousness. It has no substance. You can't weigh it. You can't hold it. You can't touch it. You can't paint on it. You can't cut it. You can't tie it down. because it doesn't exist in the realms of the physical world. It is a force. And we take this stuff so seriously, and we think it's so it creates realities that's so convincingly real that we never question them. And that's why we put together this group, so people can come and question and not believe what we have to say. The last thing we want is people believing idly what we say. Oh, Dave said that, Jenny said that, the person said that. We don't want that. We want people to go, is this true or not? And we want people to really see if it's true for them. I know it's true for everything, not just people, all life, all living beings. That's why I stopped doing tree surgery. But we have to look within ourselves, and we have to start to notice. And when we do, we start getting onto the trick. And when we start to get on the trick, we're like, I don't know what it is, but I know I feel different. Can't put my finger on it, but it's there. I know it's there.
I think a friendly balance take on.
Should we have a brew and then come back to that?
Yeah.
We'll have a cup of tea. We're going to have 10 minutes.
Which time are we going to go?
10 minutes. This is where I go in South, try and figure out in South Africa, but it's still 10 minutes in South Africa.
And Canada.
And Canada. And Sweden.
Sweden's gone, I think.
Back in 10 minutes.
I think about 25 past.
One second, look, you're muted.
Oh,
No, you're not.
okay. I have to run, but thank you so much.
Oh, Leia, thank you
It's
so
10
much.
for Leia.
Great to see you. Great to hear you.
I miss you, love, I really do.
Miss you, guys. You must come back here
Oh,
soon.
we really want to. We really, really want to.
Hopefully soon, hey?
Let's get
Thanks,
started.
Jen. And thanks again for the heads up. Let me know the next one, hey?
Oh, definitely will. Love you, Leia.
Bye.
Love to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We've lost my sister. Where's she gone? That's brilliant. Yeah. Always bloody happy.
Do you know, I turned up at one of my jobs when I worked in care, and I just walked through the door and I was like, hi! And the supervisor, she said, are you always so fucking happy?
Damn.
She just looked at me, you're always so fucking happy.
I love it. We always went for a walk with a lady, and she never asked us back out for a walk, did she? Can you find out why she never wanted to go for a walk? It was too high vibe. Can't be around high vibe people. Bless you, love. I really liked it.
No, we thought we had a new friend.
Got on bed. Let's go tell everyone. Told everybody about it.
Can I be a rebel and just fill up my tea?
Yeah. Help yourself.
Because it looked good.
Not from my cup.
Have you
Not
got
from
the
my cup.
Echinacea and Uja, Rosehip and Uja?
I don't know. It's one of them. Wouldn't
Oh,
know.
I'll just.
It's. We took all the boxes off just to make things confusing.
I'll just have a look at it.
Spice of life.
It's actually mouse protection.
It is
Because
actually
we had to
mouse
throw loads
protection.
of tea away because the mice kept getting in. So they're now in a wooden box. Mice can't get in.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was occurring to me as we were speaking before is that the more you wake up and start to see this in yourself, you see it in other people. So I think a lot of people have kind of been in medical models or gone through therapy or are just bought into that system. They're bought into the idea that people can be broken and it's going to take a long time to be fixed. And I'd been in that model for 10 years when I came across this. And I think the thing that struck me the most and impacted me was that Roger Mills, as he was sharing, like he looked at the group of people, and there's people there with all kinds of labels. There were people there just because they wanted to learn to share this. There's all different people in the room, But he spoke about, I talk to people's health. I don't talk to their behaviour, I don't talk to their story, I don't talk to who they think they are, I talk to the health that's within them, and I know it exists. And then he would show videos of the work he'd done in Lockwood Gardens out in California, which was one of the projects where people used to just go and dump bodies there because they knew that the police and ambulance and things were too scared to go in. So it's just a really downtrodden place, and he decided to try and get funding to work in these communities. And he just said he initially would go in and just start getting rapport with people and running workshops and tempting people with like pizza. But he said he went in a very different person after coming across the principles, because he used to work with what was wrong with people and trying to fix that, and what do these people need, to going in and just getting interested in people and knowing that when people learn about what's true for all of us, when they learn about this for themselves, they will know how to sort their lives out. They will know how to change their community. They will know what to do. And he realised all the other things would go in and say, oh, let's paint it, make it look nicer. Let's make sure that all the rubbish is taken away. Let's offer some kind of class. But he said if people's state of mind didn't change, then nothing was going to change. And it would just go back to how it was before. And I remember just sort of kind of sitting there listening and realising that, and it's something you often speak about, the reason I hadn't been able to fix myself in that 10 years of trying was because I was never broken. There was actually nothing wrong with me. I just thought there was something wrong with me. I thought that I was a broken human being, and I'd studied all the reasons why and looked to my past and spent time in therapy and blamed my sister and all these things. And it was such a different approach. It's like, but what Sydney brought to the world was that he saw why we experienced suffering more and more and more when we were thinking about our suffering. Because thought and feeling are one, and that only happens now. So if you're going to therapy each week recalling traumatic things from your past, you kind of could go in feeling all right and come out feeling terrible. But I spent most of my time ruminating and thinking about the past and what was wrong with me and how I was going to fix myself, and it made total sense in that world. And then suddenly I was just sat there like, what he was saying made total sense. But he saw health within every single person that he met, and he worked in all different communities. He worked with the police force, he worked with low-income mothers, and he said, you know, people on all different types of drugs. And he said, but slowly they started to wake up to this, because he saw in them what they couldn't see for themselves. He saw that they were whole, but they lived in misunderstanding about life. And the more that he spoke to their wholeness, the more he would start to have that back. And they made the changes in their communities, like they got the drug dealers out. And I think the videos that also struck me was him sharing this in the prison system. And I'd been so kind of judgmental and scared, I guess, of people who were in prison. But then suddenly he's like showing these videos of people that are just like me, who were telling stories about their families, telling stories about how they ended up there, and saying that they were grateful for being in prison because now they're learning about this. And something you have said, people have said to you in prison, they realised the prison was never where they were, the prison was their mind, and that they'd found freedom in prison. And I was thinking,
true freedom. You look at these people and they're literally glowing and bouncing around the room. You look at you get to see it like time and time again. You get to see that there really isn't a circumstance which is creating anybody's experience. There is no circumstance that truly has a hold over people. There is no circumstance that has the ability to inflict pain.
and I think the other
I'm not
thing,
saying not physically hurt, but even that we experience by thought and consciousness. But you get to see that we really do, like, no matter what, even in prison, people can wake up in a moment and go, I'm free.
I think the other thing that came across was how much love and compassion they had for each other in the room. And I'd kind of lived in a world of good people, bad people, and you saw that they live in that same misunderstanding we live in, like, oh, I've made mistakes, I've done things I'm not proud of, I get caught up, and it leveled the playing field again, and like just opened my heart for people that I'd kind of cordoned people off. And it really, like, I went home and people thought, my parents thought I joined a cult, because I went in a very insecure, anxious person that still struggled with my eating disorders and things, and then just kind of came back, not the most extrovert person in the world, but just comfortable in my own skin, just able to have a conversation and feel comfortable. And they'd say, what did you learn? I'm like, I was there for 3 days. I couldn't put it into words for a really long time. And it's only really looking back, but it's knowing that we're not broken and no one is. Like, there's a wholeness that we can experience, and that we can have the thought of broken, and we'll feel that, but that's thought, and that's creating reality. And I think I started getting really suspicious of my own mind, because we have got an indicator when we're off track or not aligned, as Dave was speaking about earlier. Like, the intensity of our feelings can wake us up to something like, wow, it really looks like, and in that moment it might be that we can do nothing about it, but there's an understanding there. And I feel like that is something that carries us. And like Lisa was saying, you ride it, and then you fall off when you crash, but life becomes more playful. And I think all the things that we know are good things to do, be more grateful, don't be judgmental, be compassionate. All these things that I knew were good ideas suddenly started just showing up in my life. And you go from a kind of model of having to kind of do life right and trying to do gratitude and trying to be this person, to recognizing that when we do let go more, we become more of that, because it is what we're made of, and it's there, it's present, it hasn't left us. And I always remember having that sense of like, I knew this, and then I saw times in my life where it had shown up, like you were speaking of earlier, like it had shown up, but that seemed like a fluke. It didn't seem like, and I think it suddenly made me realise, well, what is it that takes me away from that? Well, it's believing a world that doesn't exist, believing that reality is created a way that it isn't. And I do that on a daily basis, but it's like, it's different. Like, people often will speak about life before and life afterwards. And I know there's a man, Michael Neal, who's written books, and he just said, nothing changed, everything's different, or something. And it's kind of that strange sense. And you can't put it into words.
That's it. That's, again, this is nothing new. You know, what we're talking about isn't new. This is just, it's been around since the beginning of time. You know, it isn't anything that is, oh, this is a new approach. It's not even an approach. You know, you can't link this to CBT, NLP, mindfulness. It's not in that kind of category of therapy. It's not a therapy. We're talking about fundamental truth about life, and therefore it has always existed. Mind, the universal, the deep intelligence that lives all things, that invented humanity. We're talking about something the intellect can't comprehend. It can dream up an idea of what it looks like. It can give it a name. God, Buddha, Hashem, Christ, Allah. Come up and give it all different labels. Quantum field, you're a scientist. You know, we can dream up all these different words, and we can dream up ideas what we think it is. It's never that. It's never that. Because the moment we think, it's the infinite collapsing into a potential. You will never see the infinite with the intellect. The intellect can't even comprehend infinite. The intellect can't even comprehend infinite. Oh, no, infinite is, it's forever, it's everythingness. The intellect can't even come close to comprehending it, yet that is what everybody is. And from time to time, I don't think there'll be anybody in this room throughout their life where they haven't fallen into this space of, wow, whoa, that was mad. Wow, I just felt really expansive and quiet, peaceful, love. And then you realize that's what it is, it's love. And I often say, love is when we fall in love as human beings, or as beings fall in love. I was watching jackdaws today in the trees pairing up. There's a few things that hate me about humanity. I'm probably going off a bit of a tangent now, but we talk about, we separate ourselves from nature. We've created the human world and what we call the natural world. The natural world. And so there's humans and then there's everything else. We've separated ourselves. We no longer consider ourselves to be part of the whole. We've forgot we're nature. And therefore we've developed these stupid ideas which are very detrimental to other beings and ourselves in the long run, whereby we say things like never put human emotions and feelings onto an animal, or animals don't experience emotions and feelings. Animals don't think, they run on instinct. What's instinct? How can you have instinct without thought? How can anything know what to do without thought? And I think when we come back and we put ourselves in our rightful position as part of the whole, and we go, oh no, we didn't invent human beings, we didn't invent thought, we didn't invent feelings. These are nature feelings. This is a nature force. We are nature. When we put ourselves in the rightful place, when humanity en masse wakes up one day and goes, fucking hell, we're nature, we will put ourselves back in our rightful place and we will stop destroying everything that's going on, everything we're doing. We'll stop using everything for our own gain and greed and selfishness. These are all just illusions created by the mind that people are unaware of, totally innocently, because we can't know what we don't know. But this experience stuff is the same stuff, mind, that I was just talking about. It's the intelligence between, Ben, you're going into tree work, and I learned a lot about humanity through studying trees. I learned a lot about God, whatever you want to call it, mind, through observing trees. And I remember one day pulling a thorn out of my hand. And I mean, I've encountered 17 years of tree work. I've encountered an awful lot of thorns. I remember one day pulling this thorn out of my hand, and this question came into my mind. And it just said, why do plants have thorns? To protect it. How does it work? Well, I go near the tree, I work on it, I get pricked, and I don't like it. So if I can, I'll leave it alone. And then my mind just kept on bringing me the next question, but how does it work? And well, it works because the thorn pierces my skin and it hits a nerve, and this nerve sends a message to my brain, and via consciousness and thought, I interpret that message and I create the reality of the experience, pain. And therefore, I don't go near it. And then the next question was, how does a plant understand the animal nervous system? How does the plant, without a brain or a nervous system, understand the presence of the animal nervous system? Because without a nervous system in that interaction, the thorn is totally useless. Many plants grow with thorns, or nettles grow with things that are full of little glassy hooks that are full of alkali. There's an intelligence behind all life. And it took me weeks. I was pondering that question. How does the plant kingdom know about the animal kingdom nervous system? They don't have brains. They don't have this nervous system themselves. And then one day it hit me. It was so obvious and so simple. They don't. Neither do I. I didn't know about my nervous system till I learned about it at school and college. It's just a concept to me, but it's actually a physical manifestation of a knowledge that created both thorn and nervous system. It's the same knowledge that spans the chlorophyll within a cell of a leaf and a ball of light 90 million miles away. The earth itself has never touched the sun. The chlorophyll cell has never touched the sun. Yet there is pure knowledge built into every single green bit of a plant, the chlorophyll cell. There's knowledge of light from the sun. The knowledge spans because there's no separation. Deep down, fundamentally, in this universe, everything is exactly the same thing. playing the game of separation and individuality, but everybody and every single thing is God. Everything is consciousness. So Sid spoke about this universal mind, and he said everybody's it. These are universal principles, universal because they're applicable to everybody and everything. Everybody is born of the same place. And I'm talking about manifestation of matter, beings, all beings. They spoke about the awareness, the universal consciousness. This consciousness, everybody is a state of consciousness. In fact, everybody is a state of the same consciousness. We're all one consciousness, playing the game of individuality and separation by thought. And he said consciousness is the awareness of life. It's the awareness. It's to be aware. It's to hear the clock. It's to hear the voice. It's to be aware of life itself, to be aware of ourselves, to be aware of living. And he said, and then there's universal thought. Everybody thinks. Everybody is powered by this thought stuff. And this is where we all appear to be different, because we all think different. And we all think that the reality that we encounter is true. We all think it's real. We all think it's true. And therefore we argue our point. And this is what an argument is. It's when two realities come into close proximity and the other one tries to overcome the other one. One tries to overcome two. Because this person's reality looks so real to them, they will argue to their blue in the face against this person's reality, who is equally adamant that the way they see the world is correct. Well, that's what thought does. It creates realities that look real. Including each other. So Sid spoke about these three principles, and he said, from these three principles, he said, you have everything. This is everything that life is. It's where everything comes from. It's how everything is created and experienced. And where everything goes back to, he said, but ultimately, he said, the three principles are just words. He said, because in reality, it's one force. It's one force. There's not three different things, mind, consciousness, and thought. Mind isn't more spiritual than thought. And consciousness isn't more important than thought. No, it's all the same thing. There is no separation in it. And when we start to get back to that singular place, that place within that we are, you start to realize, as one of our good friends, we're working at the moment towards going to the Congo to work with tribal and religious leaders, Jenny and I. And this is born from a man we worked with in South Africa, and he had a deep realization, and he was a Catholic priest, training to be a Catholic priest, and he'd been in monasteries since he was 11. He was from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and his name's Gordell. I sent it to you, Dee. And he fell out with God because he ended up in a wheelchair. And he'd said in Catholicism that you cannot serve God if you are crippled. And so he fell out with God. After all those years of working hard and trying to serve God, he said, I fell out with him. He said, that man sat miles away from mankind, observing and judging us all and watching us all. He said, I fell out. He said, I stopped believing in him. And we spoke this day about a person who came on your training one time, and she said, this makes so much sense what you're saying. She said, because my husband is one of the original Bible, he transcribes original text from the Bible. And she said, one day he came back a few years. Translates. He came back a few years ago and said, I think the translation's wrong in the beginning of the Bible. He said, because where it says, in the beginning is the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He said, I think that's a really inaccurate translation. He said, when I've read it, it reads to me, in the beginning was thought, and thought was with God, and thought was God. And when Gordell heard that, this man just, he said, he's far more articulate than me. He is one of the most fantastic human beings. But when we interviewed him later on, He's on the outskirts of Soweto in Johannesburg. And we interviewed him. And he said, I realized, he said, that God I feared was me. I am somehow that God that I feared. And when people start to wake up to that within themselves, they are the creative force of life. They are it. We create the world we see. Don't try and change the world, change yourself, and the world will change with you. And I know that firsthand because I went from a world of pure hell where humanity was cancer and it was full of terrible places and terrible people, and to the next minute waking up and standing there and going, holy shit, life is the most miraculous phenomenon, and falling in love with humanity, realizing we're lost. We're lost in a story that we tell ourselves. All these stories, they're all thoughts. We're lost in thought. We're lost in the dream. And one of the things Sid Banks would say is, we're tapping people on the shoulder, helping them wake up from the dream, for them to wake up and realize that they are the dreamer before they go back into the dream, but knowing they're the dreamer. And that's it. I was just saying to Dina, this is it. This is it right now. What everybody is looking for, they already are. This is it here, now, right now. This is it. This is the most spiritual thing. It's already happening. Life itself. It's a spiritual game. It hides from itself. And when we wake up and we realize that the very thing we are looking for is ourself right now, not the story, not the ego, but this moment, we find the ultimate perfection. We find the ultimate perfection. You realize that everything is totally perfect. Outside of a judgment, you've just got pure perfection. You've got pure neutrality. It takes judgment to give it a flavor. Yes, right, wrong, good, bad. And what one person thinks is wrong is the next person's great. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. You see, when we look to the world of form and when we look to the world of opinion, we're on rocky ground. But when we look to what is constant, mind, consciousness, thought, that force, when you look to that, you realize that's what everybody is. Playing the game they're not. And it's so simple. It is so simple.
So the cool thing about Waddell as well is he went away and he studied philosophy, theosophy, all kinds of. He's just a really educated, incredible learner. But he went back through so much of what he'd learned, and he said he was finding passages in different centuries where people were trying to point to this. And he just said it's like truth is hidden in plain sight. He just kept looking back, and he's like, but he hadn't heard it like that before because he had that separation. But it was cool because he kind of went to look for if there's evidence for this in life, and he kind of came back and he was reading this stuff to us. That is stunning. It's beautiful. And he just said it's been under my nose and I hadn't seen it. And he said, I don't know why, but he just in that training, he just said, I'm sitting here in peace now. He said, I'm just in peace. And he went from being afraid of this God that he wasn't sure if he believed in to just realizing he'd created a concept, and he just fell back into that space. And that's where he lives from. In some, he's always an inspiration to us because he lives in a pretty violent area, and there's been the recent xenophobic attacks, and he doesn't have a lot, but he's always just like, how can I serve? And when we were thinking about going over to Burundi or the Congo, we were thinking, wow, how are we going to get that many people, and how are we going to get enough funding? And he said, why don't we start small? Let's start with 10 people. Let's see if we can work with 10 people. I'm like, that seems manageable. We can do that. And I think he's just. So we very quickly realised that when we were in Scotland, we had Skype calls with him, probably monthly after we left South Africa in August 2008, and it was just like this.
18.
2018.
17.
18. It was, we were just learning from each other, and you quickly realise we are all students and we're all teachers. There isn't like a hierarchy of this, of people have got more than you.
No.
You don't realise that, and Sid would say, you know, everyone is enlightened, they just don't realise it. And I felt, for me, I was getting introduced to the best teacher in the world, and it was in me. It wasn't, I'd looked outside at so many other people and wanted them to give me the answer. And I think that's the thing with this understanding, is you take it away with you. It's not in a room, it's not in a person, it's not in a book, it's waking something up inside you, and that's always there, regardless. I think it's been nice working with people around the world with all different stories and circumstances. And sometimes they can seem quite heavy, but knowing that to be true, that inside them is the same stuff that's inside me, and that's enough.
I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing about that. When we worked in this spot called Africa Tikon in the suburb of Kailicha in Cape Town, a township. We worked with this charity, and I didn't know what the fuck to say, because there was like 26 like faces staring at me, and I was like, and they were all kind of didn't know what the hell they were there for, did they? And the first thing I said was, we had a flip chart about the same size as that with paper on it, and I stood up and went, okay, do you want to tell me all the things that you struggle with? What causes, what are your problems? Freaking out. And 45 minutes later, I mean, this is a township, right? So it was like things like, my daughter's on tick, which is crystal meth. My daughter's a prostitute, my son's been murdered, I'm harbouring my nephew, he's been hunted down by gangs and police, and this, that and the other. Then there was the work problems and the colleague problems and the relationship problems. There's all this stuff, and 4 pages, I was writing all this stuff down, and I'm thinking, why the fuck did you say that to these people, you idiot? You know nothing about these problems. What do you know about daughters on crystal meth? What do you know about sons being shot dead? Nothing. And then I remembered, you don't need to do it. It's not what you're here for. And after 3 days, there was 4 pages, wasn't there, of writing. And after 3 days, we came back and I said, I'm really curious, just at the end of these 3 days, can we go back to this sheet? And we went through, and whose was that one? That was mine. Now you can put a line through that. That's not a problem. And then there was things like, oh, got to it, and there's already lines through it. No, we've figured something out about that. We've had a conversation, and we've come up with a new idea for that. So you can write that on. And these people, every single one of the things that we wrote down that board, there wasn't one we didn't put a line through at the end of 3 days. Where
people just saying they've found peace,
come
they found
to peace.
forgiveness.
Yeah, they come to peace, they found forgiveness, they found acceptance, they found new solutions to all problems. And this was simply not through looking at what we thought was the problem, but by looking at what is the nature of a problem. Does a problem exist outside of the mind? Isn't a problem just a perspective? Is it a problem? Is it an opportunity? Well, it's a perspective. So you start to wake up and you start to see that there is nothing outside of this thought mind stuff, and it has the ability to change the world when people realize the nature of mind. It's the only thing they have to do. And when they change, people around them naturally become curious. Eventually they become curious.
The idea of obstacles, which is really hilarious to get to a solution to a problem, because if there isn't somewhere you need to get to, it can't be any obstacle.
It's very true.
Which throws the obstacle back in your head. There's nowhere else.
Yeah.
It's just really funny.
Yeah. And it's beautiful to see, isn't it? And the nice thing about this is, like Jen says, it's an unlearning more than a learning. This isn't something that you acquire knowledge of. It's what we already are when we unearth it. Like you say, when the paper comes out of the cup, you're left with the rainbow. You are left with that special part that we already were made from, just covered up by a story. When we start to get wise as to the story, it's like, we're onto the trick of life. And when we're onto the trick of life, it doesn't have to get easier. Doesn't mean that you're immune. This isn't an anesthetic. This is totally not an anesthetic. This isn't about always feeling good, by the way. This certainly isn't. This is about fully living life. And to be alive is to experience, and to experience is to experience the full range of emotions and feelings and experiences, which includes feeling like shit. There's nothing wrong with feeling like shit. We're allowed to feel sad and depressed and grief-ridden and fucking, oh, the world's ending. We're allowed to feel like that. We're allowed. There are no wrong feelings. There are no wrong thoughts. In society, there's wrong action. But all action is born of thought.
We're all it. Okay. I have this crazy, this might not make any sense. But actually, it's a pair of trousers that came to mind, but I'm going to use my dress, all right? But if you sort of take one little tiny square in that dress, okay, one little tiny bit of thread down there, okay, and that little bit of thread is sort of going, oh, I'm so insignificant, and I just so don't matter, and I'm just this little tiny speck in the great big universe, and I'm just nobody, and I'm all of this. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit like, it's not even like, no, you're useful to the dress. It's not even that. It's like, no, you're really useful to the dress. No, you are the dress. Yeah. There's the proof, you know, I mean, there's the proof. You're it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there. It's not duh.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not, yeah. It's not even the midway point.
No. We'll call it a night. Does anybody want to say anything? Any questions? Any comments?
Over the time, I'd like other people to talk about this whole family thing, because I think it's really interesting about how, because I've done work with groups in the last few weeks, and really great responses, really good stuff going on in the months. It's great. When it comes to your own family, and I'm very aware that it's because I have so much thinking about it, because my thinking is saying I really want them to get it, because I want them to be happy and I want them to be this. And of course what that does is take yourself right away from the place where you need to be to even be able to begin to communicate any of this, because that just comes from being here, just me. Whereas as soon as it matters equals thinking. I'm here, I'm outside myself, I'm halfway to them trying to bring them in. That's no good. I know that's no good. But how on earth do you get away from that with your family? So hard.
I struggled immensely. I've got a 25-year-old daughter who is doing what she's got to do, and I'm just drip feeding her. You know, conversation. She works in care. I just bring it back to love every time. My mum is 85. She's really seen what she went through at 40 over and over again on the hospital, and I was really fighting I wanted them to, you know, if you get this, you're going to feel better, and I realised I can't do that for them. All I can do is love them, and everything I meet with both of them, I just love. And that's all you can do. That's all you can do.
That's beautiful.
And also, you're not responsible for somebody else's happiness.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I spent my whole life trying to make people happy, and what this did for me was realising, well, you know, they're going to be happy, they're going to be sad, they're going to like all of it, they're going to react to whatever shit comes along. You know, and I really lost it with my mum last week, shouting at her down the phone. You know, she really shouldn't be allowed on Facebook. But take her computer away. But I hate the fact my mum's so unhappy. 85%, she's so unhappy. She's so unhappy. She's I'm really happy. I'm perfectly, and she's not happy, you know. But I can't make her happy. I can't do that for her. She's in that.
But we all experience happiness and sadness, and I know that you can look at somebody, and even that thought that somebody isn't happy is coming from within you.
Yeah.
So it's very easy. It's very saying that it's not that she might be happy, but within that unhappiness,
she's happy in her
unhappiness. So it's the way we perceive others as well.
I wonder let that.
And the way we perceive people suffering as well, because I know I had a really turbulent time a little while ago, and my poor dad, I watched my poor dad worry so much about me, I was totally fine. Totally fine. I wasn't, but I was. Because I knew I was. Like that that metaphor of a ping pong ball being under the water. I knew it was under the water and you just pop back up again, and I did. But I watched my poor dad kind of worry about me, but that was his interpretation of me.
What causes me pain is when I think I know how something should go and how someone should react. And then when I realise that, when they're not doing what I want,
I was just doing that.
Yeah.
Feeling this.
I was just
Well,
thinking,
we all have it all, don't we? All have just the whole kaleidoscope of it all the time. And when someone's having the best time of their life, someone's having the worst time of their life, having the most ordinary time of their life, bored, stuck in a row, whatever. We all get that, all at different times. So if we're feeling pretty fucking good, and someone's looking a bit miserable, you're like, I want to give them life, but I'm feeling great. But then when you might be feeling really fucking miserable, they might be like, I want to give them life. So we're all just ordinary, living, breathing creatures that create this world that we live in.
And it's born from the idea that there is such a thing as a wrong feeling.
Yeah.
I,
And like Sue said to you.
Yeah, there was the lady who introduced me to this. My life wasn't a bed of roses. I mean, I spent time in prison and drugs and drink and depression and all kinds of shit. But I remember sitting down with Sue, and Sue said to me, I'd had this big awakening and sat down, like carried on having conversations with Sue, and we just kind of bounced ideas off each other. And she said to me, she was sat in a big chair and she was looking back. She said, would you change anything, Dave? I said, in life? And she went, yeah, anything in your life, would you change it? I said, no. She said, why not? I said, because I see it all as valuable. It helped me grow to what I've become, to what I see now, I've learned. No, it's valuable, I wouldn't change a thing, not one thing. She went, nothing? I said, no, not one thing. And then we got quiet again, we sat there and said, yeah, change one thing. And she said, what's that? I said, I would take away everybody else's pain that I created along the way. And she just looked at me and went, that's selfish of you. No, you don't understand. I'd take away everybody else's pain. She said, like I said, selfish of you. We're always trying to avoid it. Everybody's running away from feelings. They're scared of feelings. We're scared to feel. Why are we scared to feel? Truly, is it logical to be scared to feel? No, we know it's not logical to be scared to feel. It's illogical to be scared to feel feelings. Feelings. Is it illogical to be scared of thoughts? Is it logical to be scared of what we think? Our experience? No, it's not logical, but we will be. There'll be times when we become really, we'll find it hard. And people will go, oh, the principles don't work. No, the principles are working. They're creating the illusion of suffering. But when we start to, one of the things Sydney Banks would say is, if the only thing that people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. Because we would stop saying, you did it to me, you did it to me, you did it, you people, those people, those people. We would know that it is all a construction of mind, and that everybody's totally equal. Everybody's born equal.
Thought that it can. So years ago, I was asked to do an exercise in some teaching anyway, and it was like create some people who have said in your life that have said bad things about you. Not really bad, like Jack is really scared of you, or Jack, all that sort of thing. And we made this list, and I don't know what the exercise was for now, I can't remember. I just remember looking at the list and thinking, oh my goodness, if I wrote this list down the middle and across all different bits and mix them all up, even if you took my memory away of what they said about me, I could still match them up because all of those things say as much about the people that said them as they do about me. Okay, so like my sister would say that because she's very open, and somebody else would say. Somebody else might just say it differently, but you know, do you see what I mean? So, but you know what's really funny? That was a really big thing for me. It was like I lived with that for about 10 years. Like, that was a really interesting thing. And then I was telling one of my daughter's friends about it, and she was really interested. And then in the middle of it, I just went, "Oh, oh my gosh, what? And I was like, it took me 10 years to work out that that's true, and I say about anybody as well."
That's it. That's very humbling. That's very humbling. I don't think it is. It's humbling. Humility. Let's call it a night. Thank you, everybody online. Mr. T, you and I, we need to have a conversation. And Jessie, how are you doing, love?
Good.
Good. Helena, how are you, love?
Good. We're waiting for you to come for a visit.
Oh.
She's been tempting us with stories of snow.
Oh, no, don't say that. I would love to come, love.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
And let us know if you do come to the UK.
Yeah. All right.
Love you, man. Mr. T, I'll send you a text and we will have a conversation in the next week. 1 second, let me turn.
On next week. Oh, is it on next week?
Hopefully. Oh, and can people please put the money in the box? Thank you. I can't unmute you, Mr. T.
6. I think is it the 13th?
Let's have a call. I'll text you, and we'll have a chat this coming week because I want to hear how it's going. Okay.
You can do alternative.
Helena, sending you loads of love, and when you come into the Lake District. Sorry, I was talking to Helena that time. I'm going to give you a text. I can't unmute you, Mr. T.
So we might.
I don't know why.
If not, you'll be joining.